Welcome. Today's lecture is going to be on crime scene investigations and procedures. Through this lecture today, you should be able to gain a basic understanding of the crime scene investigation process, as well as the steps outlined and the importance of working the scene according to those steps. This is a 12-step process designed by the FBI. Let's get into step number 1. For preparation, you just really got to ask yourself, do you have what you need to work the scene effectively? Do you have the proper equipment, the proper supplies, and the proper and adequate amount of personnel? It's okay to ask for assistance from other agencies and other individuals that may have a specialty in a certain concentration. Next is your approach. When approaching the scene, always keep your safety in mind, stay alert, take notes, and gather information from some of the first responders. Next, you will need to ensure that the scene is secure and protected. So has the crime scene tape been put up? Is it in the appropriate spot? Does it need to be expanded on? We don't want to exclude any important evidence that could be outside of that initial barrier. You will then need to initiate your primary survey and use all your senses during this time. What do you hear? What do you see? And just take note of that. Always be cautious as you walk through the scene and take note of any perishable evidence that may need to be collected immediately. You can also use this time to take some initial photographs of the scene and the surrounding area. Next, you will want to evaluate your physical evidence. So collect the perishable evidence first, as I stated before, and then collect evidence from most easily accessible to the most difficult to get to. Consider everything in the scene as possible evidence. It's always better to collect something and not need it than to have left behind a crucial piece of evidence. So we've been discussing evidence, but what is evidence? Depending on the circumstances and the type of scene that you're working, this can be a wide variety of items, but the most commonly are weapons, blood, fingerprints, personal electronic devices, other DNA like hair and saliva samples, as well as tire or shoe impressions. Then you will need to prepare your narrative description. So take notes, not only on important case information, but weather conditions, the scene activity, and then all of the evidence that you've collected, as well as the method of collection. Next, photograph the scene. Not only will you need to take overall photographs of your scene, but you will also need to take mid-range and close-up photography. So close-up photos need to be taken with a scale. And you may need to also take additional close-up photos off-scene with additional lighting and proper equipment. After that, prepare your sketch. So you can do a rough sketch at the scene. This does not need to be to scale, but also just make sure to notate measurements for your follow-up diagram. That'll be more detailed and include those. That's always going to be beneficial for scene reconstruction work. When you're conducting your detailed search, always make sure to mark evidence with a flag or some other sort of marker. Searches always need to be orderly, but more extensive searches may require a search pattern, and this can be done in a grid pattern, stripe, or spiral pattern. Next, be sure to record and collect all of your evidence. Ensure to notate the time, location, and the collector of the evidence. Also make sure to follow appropriate collection and packaging procedures, so don't package any wet or bloody clothing in plastic packaging as it will mold. For weapons, always make sure they are unloaded or disarmed, and for any drug-related substances that you collect, make sure that they're properly packaged, double packaged to avoid contamination. Next, complete your final walkthrough. Conducting a final walkthrough can help you ensure that you didn't overlook any evidence, and this is always best done with an additional officer or technician. And then you've reached your last step of the process where you release the scene. Only release the scene after you make sure that your work is concluded. Gaining access into a scene after you've released it really creates some difficulties, and most often you'll need another search warrant to re-enter the residence. Every scene is going to require different tactics depending on the unique circumstances of the case, but I hope through this presentation you have gained a basic understanding of the crime scene investigation procedure.